Good morning. Namaskar. Welcome to the Office of Honorable Parliamentarian at the Rajya Sabha, Sri Sujit Kumar's office, hosting Global Development Dialogue on today's important topic of valuing water on the International Water Day. So the topic that has been kept here is valuing water to improve water security in Odisha. This platform has been designed by Sri Sujit Kumar in collaboration with Xavier University, Kaling Kusum Foundation, and Sri Sri University and knowledge partner Lex Mantra to bring out several discussions on important issues. And no, nothing can be as important as water today, with water scarcity hovering everywhere around. So we have a fantastic panel to discuss this issue. So without much ado, I, Kamalakant Das, welcome you to this platform to hear and learn and get the insights from and learn the recommendations from our experts who have worked for decades on this issue. So may I have the privilege of welcoming Sri Ranjan Kumar Panda, known as the Waterman of Odisha, convener Water Initiatives, convener Combat Climate Change Network, Mahanadi River Waterkeeper, and first Green Hero awardee. So Mr. Panda is a sociologist by education, has about 3 decades of experience facilitating several initiatives, starting from grassroots to national as well as South Asia levels to promote water, environmental conservation, climate change advocacy. He convinced two active networks, water initiatives and combat climate change network. He's a well-known expert in water, sanitation, disasters, climate change issues, and also a senior freelance journalist. He also leads Youth for Water campaign and the Chhattisgarh Wash Academy. So that is a long biodata if I go to read, because that will take minimum 10 minutes. So Ranjanji has done excellently brilliant, inspiring work. What I like personally, his work is he brings young people.
The link and all, and internally you do these three things. Nisar को पहले inform कर दीजिए कि बहुत.
Can someone mute? So what I like Ranjanji's work is he brings in young people, trains them in climate change and water, and also trains journalists how to report on these sensitive issues. So there are several nuances, technical knowledge required, and also sociological and social sensitivity. So he's creating a sensitive eco warriors among the youth. So that is a fantastic contribution apart from all that he does with the government, with industry, with collaborative agencies. Over to Ranjanji Panda. I can't give you a full introduction. That will take 1 hour. So can I just request you to keep your message, give us a message, share your experience and insight. And what do you think, why are we heading at? People have been talking about the Third World War is about oil, the Fourth World War, which has not happened, Third World War, the Fourth World War, or the third again, maybe on water. So how are we in Odisha? How are we in India? What is the global situation? And what you can share with us on this day? And what normally this is the platform by an MP, and some MLAs might join online as well. So what do you think public representatives should do? And also as a university faculty, I'm also keen what students can do in collaboration with your work and network. Thank you. Over to you, Ranjan sir.
Thank you so much. Namaskar. I'm so much flattered by the kind of introduction you have given. I'm just a soldier of water, and I thank Sri Sujit Kumar ji and the platform for having me here on this this occasion, World Water Day, that is very sacrosanct for people like me, working on water for almost 3 decades now. And we take this opportunity always to talk to as many people as possible in different platforms. And definitely Sujit Kumar ji is doing something, a great service on this. And I'm sure all the voices that today we learn from here, we hear from here, will definitely go a long way in redefining the way we value water at the moment. This year, I think, as everybody knows, the world has now realized that water is not something that is a commodity. It's not a priced, it's not a thing to be priced actually. It's a valuable, invaluable resource. You cannot price it. And that is reflected in the thought process in of the global leaders as well. You know, you must have heard about the Das Verma report, a very independent and sought after report that was presented in the UK. You go to that. The very recent framework that the UN House has actually adopted on something that we have been talking for, I think, several years, maybe more than decades, is actually valuing natural resources as the prime in considering them as the prime in charting your economic path. So this Das Verma report says, economy is a subset of ecology. So and COVID has taught us how COVID to me is actually a part of the larger climate crisis that we face. And that has again taught us how the way we have treated our water resources, our natural resources, is actually brought us to something that we will face more and more such pandemics in different forms. And our capacity to cope, our capacity to fight would definitely not be sufficient if we don't value water. COVID, in fact, is directly linked with the access, affordability, quality, and sustainability of the water resources that we have. So unless we have proper water, safe water for everyone, fighting such a pandemic becomes very difficult. So this should be reason enough for us to actually think that water is invaluable. Cannot do so. 2-3 basic, I think, statistics that I would like the students or other people who are participating, that should stir us, that should actually concern us, is we have already sort of overused the resources that we have at our disposal. I always say we are a credit card generation insofar as water is concerned. So at this moment, I am actually using the water of my grandchildren. So I am not using my resource anymore. So I am already on a credit from my grandchildren or beyond that. So that's a crime I am doing, because what I have done is I have actually my generations have actually, they have overused the resource. So within the last 7 decades, what we have made is we have almost utilized 70 to 80% of the utilizable resource, water. And what we have done to recharge is only 5 to 6%. So you can understand the kind of burden that we are in. And if global statistics, you said rightly, the next World War on water. So I think if global statistics or national statistics are to be taken, then actually by just in a decade, by 2030, we'll have almost, we will be requiring to use almost double of the water that we have at our disposal. So if things continue like what it is, so I think that is reason enough to be concerned. And having said that, what I would now say is there is a kind of flaw in the way that we have managed water resources so far. We have actually considered water to be a subject of civil engineering. So that has actually now has to change. And water resources has been just you have put it on demand for ourselves, just like a slave. We have considered water as a service, as a servant of human beings. So we should actually have we should have actually gone the other way around. So we have to have water on demand anytime we want. And for example, Rajasthan getting water from Narmada Canal in Gujarat to produce the second largest paddy in India. So that is something, this kind of statistics will actually disturbs you, that we have not been able to understand that water is a natural resource. It has got a socio-ecological dimension. It has got a geo-hydrological dimension. It has got a cultural dimension, and it has got a lot of other dimensions, including many other species depend on them. So what we have as humans have done is actually try to narrow down the perspective on water, and we have tried to see that, as long as I have a water bottle to buy, at 20 rupees or 30 rupees, I never in my life, I never thought that I'll buy water in a bottle. So the current generation, I think, should understand that we have actually degraded so much, the resource in the name of so-called, whatever management we have done, that is sans, conservation. We are now have to buy water. So we don't have equal affordability. We don't have equal access. So while some of us can actually buy water, many have to walk miles and miles to fetch water. So the governments are definitely doing their best to provide, I think, water services to the people. But then this is not the way it can actually continue. So you cannot have actually water in a desert in the same amount that you can have in a deltaic area. So that understanding has to come in. So water is not same for all regions. Water is not similar. So you cannot actually grow paddy or rice in a desert, and you cannot grow sort of go on growing cash crop in water starved areas. You cannot have thermal power plants in India's most drought prone zones, which actually require a lot of water. So kind of our development perspective has now to change. Our development perspective has to actually integrate the very fact that we have to live in harmony with nature. Otherwise, we are not going to survive. That we must understand. Humans are not everything on the earth. So all other species are also important, and in fact, they are more important than us. So that understanding, I would say, on this day, when we're talking about valuing water, should go. So coming back to the framework the UN has just adopted, I think it has very rightly gone beyond the GDP, the gross domestic product approach, to reporting progress, to a sort of an ecological assessment approach. So that is something I have been talking about, a gross natural product kind of thing. So I think the message here for everybody of us is actually to see that we are a subset of ecology. We are not its owner. Ecology is not our servant, not our slave, to be put on use as and when we want, wherever. So these are some of the issues now we have to understand if we actually want to survive as a civilization. Otherwise, it will destroy us. Absolutely no doubts about that. What you have seen in the Mohenjo-daro, Harappa civilization, or what you have seen now, what is happening in many of these river basins in the world, you can realize that these civilizations are going to perish. Absolutely no doubt. So unless we want to actually view water resources in a way that that ecology is prime, so everything has to actually surround ecology, the ecological aspects of water, not only sort of a civil engineering, or not only sort of a extractive sort of designs. So I think these values now the current generation should actually understand, and they should take it forward. So we have been talking about it. The new generation somehow is now starting to feel that water comes out of taps or bottles. So for me it is different. For me, water is from the groundwater reserves, from the lakes, from the water bodies. But for the children I have been interviewing last 5, 6, 7 years, I think they have been starting to consider that water is available in bottles and taps. So that mindset has to change. We need to all work together to actually make the value of water understand, and that natural resource is something that is to be protected, that is to be conserved. So there is no law in India to conserve our rivers. That we should all know that there's a law to resolve disputes around rivers, but to conserve rivers, the laws to conserve our water bodies are actually deliberately misused. So that has to be discussed. And many water bodies, they are used for other purposes. Their land types are converted quite easily, despite of several Supreme Court orders and all. So what I want to say is, it is high time that we should stop diversion of water resources to other purposes, water bodies, lakes and all, wetlands, rivers, and most importantly, the forests and mountains, because they are in majority of our rivers and water bodies, they are the actually rechargers. So I think I will have this message, I will have this, and I'm sure you will discuss more. I actually am sorry that I have to just leave after this because I have to go to another university. So so please bear with me. Good day to all. Let's actually make it properly happy. So let it not be a sad after 5 years or 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Both like an academic, also as a practitioner, scholar, you highlighted the issues that are important to be remembered. You brought in the sociological, ecological aspect that needs to be guiding us. Thank you so much. And if there are any questions, we'll keep it. We'll send that to you. And
Please.
thank you so much for gracing the occasion and setting the tone for the dialogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Das. Thank you.
So after thanking Ranjanji Panda, may I welcome Nanda Mahapatra sir. Nanda Mahapatra sir is former senior chief engineering consultant of WAPQUIS Limited official, Government of India, former chief engineer for Water Resources Department, Government of Odisha, who studied engineering from Burla, VSSCT now, Water Resource Development Center at University of Roorkee, which is IIT Roorkee now. Many of the irrigation projects in Odisha, including Indravati project in Kalahandi, which was inaugurated by Honorable CM in 2021 January, are his brainchilds. So may I request Nanda Mahapatra sir to take forward the discussion where Ranjanji Mahapatra left kind of providing the tone and setting the structure and foundation of discussion. How do you see the challenges today to water resources? How modern science can make them better for our, as Ranjanji Panda said, that we are actually, it's a credit card. So we are living on the credit card and we are actually using the resources of our grandchildren. So how do you see both as an engineer, as a scholar, as a practitioner, as a water practitioner, how do you see these issues and how valuing water can actually become part and parcel of our life, both at the individual level, social and institutional levels as well. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for inviting me to this program, and thank all the other participants. I am Nanda Mahapatra. I was in the other side of your table. I was in the government. I retired as chief engineer of Department of Water Resources in Odisha, and I was also a student, as you said, a student of engineering since 1973 to 78 in Burla, under the vastness of the water body of Hirakud. So my life is also connected with water security in Odisha. And before we start, because the context is water security in Odisha we are discussing. So before we start, let us think about the pre-independence era. If you go back to 1866, the darkest chapter in Indian history was the Navamka Durvika, where more than 1 million people died in eastern India, and that too in Odisha. Odisha is having a lot of water resources, but during that time, we saw that 1 million people died, and we realized that time the value of water. The rulers were British. The British Empire could not do anything, though there was large stock of food available, but going inside the Odisha state was not possible. Then came the age of modern India irrigation, or irrigated agriculture started with construction of weirs, barrages across India. The Rusikulya system, Mahanadi system, Godavari basin, water management are the offshoots of the of water harvesting in monsoon-based country for food security. Ours is a monsoon-based country. We have very few days of water available due to monsoon. During the post-independence period, the euphoria of nation building saw constructions of modern temples at Bakra, Hirakud dams. Food security in Odisha through Hirakud command area in undivided Sambalpur is a very, very big achievement of the state. And Hirakud helps in flood protection for saving the economy of Odisha. Hirakud not only irrigates about 150,000 hectare of Kharif and about 107,000 hectare of Rabi in districts of Sambalpur, Bargarh, Balangir, and Suvarnapur. The water released by the power plant irrigates about 106,000 hectares of delta land. And in the process, it also generates 307 megawatts of electrical power through the two power plants at Hirakud and Chiplima. So, if you want to get the know the value of water, then ask the farmers of Balangir, Bargarh, Sambalpur. They will know better what is that value of water. We cannot think of a global scale. Water is a very, very local subject. Very, very. If I don't get water, if my family doesn't get water, I don't mind what is happening in the global scale. Then, watching the vastness of, as I said, I was there in the Burla. Then I went to IIT Kharagpur, and from Kharagpur I went to Balimala, which is about 600 kilometers, 603 kilometers to be particular, away from Bhubaneswar, and that was in the undivided Koraput district. The Balimala project that is under the Dandakaranya project of Government of India, and there were settlers, refugee settlers from Bangladesh and the local Adivasis, where the density of population is very high, the rainfall is also very, very low. So in that vast land, I joined as an assistant engineer there in Balimala in the year 1980, and there I met one Mahatma, not Mahatma, I don't say Bapuji, but Mahatma. I call him Mahatma because his name was Panalal Dasgupta, who is the brother of the Pramod Dasgupta. These are all two. Pramod Dasgupta is a prominent leader of our country, and his brother was working for the common man. He was working there for harmony between the settlers, refugees, and the local Adivasis. So once he told me, you young man, maybe about 25 years, on the river Pateru, he was saying, he says, see, such vast water is going out, you young man can do something for the poor. So that was the first sentence I heard from a leader like Panalal Dasgupta, that is still reverberating in my mind. That was way back in 1980. And you see, Balimala Dam project is a joint project between Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. See, there is a river called River Sileru, which is a part of all the rivers of Koraput are part of Godavari Basin. So River Sileru and River Sapu join at Motu and become Chinna Godavari, which is again becomes Godavari. These rivers of Odisha are part of Godavari. All other rivers are directly flowing through Odisha to the Bay of Bengal. So we have got 11 river basins. So there I saw the poor people, those who do not have enough of water. So the water from our Balimala Dam, we have a dam in Chitrakunda on the borders of Andhra Pradesh. It is a joint project. 50% of water goes to Andhra Pradesh and 50% goes to is used by Odisha. So with that 50% water which comes to Balimala township is passing through a tunnel about 4 kilometers long. Then it passes through 6 turbines of 60 megawatt each. Now 2 more units have been added of each 75 megawatt. Total 510 megawatt of power generation is being done. Then the water goes through a terrace channel to River Pateru, and we have a barrage there which picks up the water of power release and from its own catchment. Then it goes through two canals, one right called Tamasa Main Canal, and the other is left main canal, which is called Gompakunda Main Canal. You see, during that time in 1980, there is no water to even for the construction of wharf. But that is a Government of India funded project, 40 crores. In that 40 crores, 60,000 hectares of irrigation has been done in the parts district of Malkangiri now. It was on undivided. So that was my first project. My journey starts with, you see, when I saw water was supplied, when I saw the ladies at bathing their infants in the water much away from Poteru River, maybe 10, 12 kilometers away, and naked boys jumping from the village road bridges constructed over the canal. So that happiness, that laughter of the woman who baths his children, that happiness of the boys who are jumping into the canal, that gives the value of water when it reaches the Adivasi lands up to Motu. So 60,000 hectares of irrigation. Recently, I traveled to my old place after my retirement. I worked as a consultant and I visited that place. All green, 60,000 hectares of paddy, groundnut, pulses, steel is the main. So 100 crores worth of groundnut is coming out from that. If you want to ask the value of water, ask those Adivasis whom I have seen in 1980. Ask those settlers of Bangladesh. Ask them, and they will say. Those who worked in our project as laborers are now economically rich, and also they are leading a very happier life. Then after Balimela, then I went for my higher studies, post-graduation in water resource development in the University of Roorkee. And then after I came back from Roorkee, I joined again in the same, my first love, undivided Koraput district in the Upper Indravati project. That was in 1985, 86. I came back from Roorkee and joined Upper Indravati project. To tell you about Upper Indravati project, four rivers were dammed. 4 rivers were dammed, and each dam height is more than 45 meters and ranging up to 81 meters. There are 4 dams, 8 dikes, 4.5 kilometer long, 7-meter dia tunnel. It is a trans-basin transfer of water. The water from the Indravati basin, which otherwise goes to Godavari basin, is now diverted through the tunnel, through the powerhouse. There are 4 into 150 megawatt of power generation, 600 megawatt of power generation in the Mukhiguda of Kalandi, Joypatna block. Then the power release goes to a river called Hati. And there is a barrage at Mangalpur. There are two canals. Again, 2 canals, one right and one left. The right goes to Junagadh area, Junagadh, and the left goes to Dharamgarh. In 85, 86, the great KVK project was there, and I was given some money, additional money, because I was working in KVK project. Because KVK was known for, Kalandi was known for its drought, for its hunger, for everything other than enough of food. And I mean, there was a lot of politics of KVK. I am not going into those details, but I have seen how fast that particular Dharamgarh and this particular Junagadh area as well. And these 2 canals are now irrigating 100,000 hectares of irrigation. And now as a consultant, I visited that area, and you see all green, So many rice mills have come up. So many, I mean, I was told 50 lakh paddy is procured, out of which 30 lakh is coming from Dharamgarh together, Junagadh and Dharamgarh. So then, if you know about the value of water, then go and ask the people of KBK, ask the people of Kalahandi, particularly Dharamgarh. You'll see a lot of greenery now, because I have seen in 80s what was the status of that, and I don't think many people are speaking of food security there in Kalahandi. It has become the rice pot of our state. So it is not an engineering feat; it is a social engineering feat. I don't claim that engineers have done it. It is the people. The Maharaja of Kalahandi, he once told us in an engineering day, I salute you all engineers who have come all from all different parts of our state and working that we dreamt for last 30, 40 years and working. So again, uplands of recently has inaugurated 30,000 of upland irrigation is done now. I mean, there will be and it will be addressed. But 24,000 hectares in Koksara block through 8 pumps, 30 cumecs of water was lifted. I was a part of the project as a consultant, and lifted to a 45-kilometer long canal from which underground pipeline network up to 4 hectares is being supplied. Is far of about 4 hectares. So that is how, if you want to know the value of water, go and ask the people of Koksara. They will say there will be problems. There will be still problem of the upland. The person who is going at the outlet, he is getting, the other man may not be getting. But those will be addressed. And again, we also have a new project called Mega Lift Irrigation Project, in which there are lift schemes. Towards the end of my career in 2011, I was given the charge of planning this multidisciplinary project of pumping water and giving water to the uplands. Why we thought of this? Because the construction of dams, reservoir is becoming extremely difficult due to social issues. So the days of Bhakra and Vihirakud is now gone. We have to think of Odisha is still underutilizing its water resources, and most of it is, you see, water. If water is not conserved, not stored, it has got no meaning. It will go to the saline seas. So we definitely have to see the ecology, but at the same time we have to see the hunger. So water has to be utilized. Water has to be conserved where it comes, and we have to delay the process of runoff from the river basin to the sea. So that is the challenge that modern day engineers are now facing. Modern day engineers are no more engineers. I mean, no more civil engineers only. They are going to be the managers of water. Water management is going to be the key. I mean, optimum utilization, improving water use efficiency. That is going to do. Coming back to the Mega Lift project, we have got about 208 pumping stations throughout the state, out of which each pumping station has been dedicated power supply. Each pumping station is covering an area of between 500 hectare to 2,000 hectare of power plant, maybe 2, 3, 4 kilometers from the river. There might be water in the river, but there is no water in the. You see, we also have very, very bad patches during monsoon, very, very bad periods. You can have the statistics, how much we spend for drought relief. So in 2011-12, we changed our course of action. We adopted a multidisciplinary approach of pumping water, and so more than 260,000 hectares potential have been created. All districts, Kalahandi, Balangir, Sambalpur, you can see all pumping stations and underground pipelines, water coming out of almost many fields, and people are happy. All ponds there being connected through pipes. Water is being preserved there. So, I mean, the state is also doing that. The state is also doing this underground pipeline so that the water use efficiency has also improved. Now, it is always very good to have an integrated approach for water management. We call it integrated water resource management in a basin scale. During my stay as a director of Odisha Water Planning Organization, I tried and I discussed with the civil society. Let us form a river basin organization in river Boitarani, which is almost 98% flowing inside our state. But basin is also large. Basin is also large. It crosses many administrative boundaries. So many interest groups are there. So it could not take off. Though we wanted, I have put this in a network of river basin organization of Asia, NARBO. So this is the only river basin of India which was included in the network of river basin organization. But later on, I realized it is very difficult to work on a basin scale. Now I think we have to move to a sub-basin scale. Sub-basin scale means a sub-basin which is within one district boundary. If it is within one district boundary, I have chosen one in Keonjhar district. It is called Ardei sub-basin, which is only in Keonjhar district. Keonjhar, as you know, is a very, very mineral-rich upper basin, and Keonjhar Boitarani is our Ganga, Gupta Ganga, we call it. So there is a conflict between industries and agriculture, but we have to manage both. If we want to socio-economically improve, we have to manage both. We have to see it a large basin scale and make water available for agriculture. Water available or water saved in agriculture will be water available for other uses. So, as I said, water in agriculture is used more than 85%. If we save 10% there, we can feed to, both industries and agriculture can coexist. So the industries have to see that their counterpart agriculture, agricultural fields also get water. So there are not many technology now. The engineers or the sociologists, as Mr. Panda was saying, it should not be only one engineering subject. It should now cover everybody, agronomist, and everybody should work. Sociologist, social engineering is the main issue which is going to be addressed by the state now, just for managing water. You see, there is a climate change scenario. There will be more and more extreme events unless we find out methodology for delaying the process of runoff and conserving it underground. I think we will be sufficient. Odisha has got the potential to be sufficient. We cannot do anything for climate change in water resources. We have to adapt to the climate change scenario and change our lifestyle. So this is what I think I have to say. And coming into this Boitarani basin, Boitarani has a conflict between industries and so there is a district mineral foundation. A lot of money is now there for peripheral development in the mines. And we have to integrate many other schemes of the government in the sub-basin scale. We keep the sub-basin saturated. Water available will also use for schools, hospitals, whatever sector you think. Water is the only variable which is going to decide whether we will be socially, economically strong or not. That is what I wanted to say. I think we have to focus on a very, very local scale. Very, very local scale. We have to consider what the local, otherwise the war has already started between states. So we need not wait for the world war. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, I think, for giving me the opportunity to share my views.
Thank you so much, Nanda Mahapatra, sir. I think we have got one perspective from Ranjan Pandya, sir, and we got one perspective from you. He has been talking about the broader picture. You gave a picture from the government side, because government looks at people's welfare as a priority task, and public servants like you were tasked to achieve those water sufficiency and other challenges as well. So I think you have given several examples how value of water is actually there with the people who have been actually using it and who have benefited out of those projects as well. So, Nanda sir, we will come back to you. Honorable MP Shri Sujit Kumar is joining for a brief period. We would like to say that welcome, sir, to the platform that you have so dearly nurtured and developed, the Global Development Dialogue Forum. Today, as we are talking about valuing water, we would like to have your insights and message, maybe a brief message, as you are rushing to different meetings now. So over to Sujit Kumar, sir, our Honorable MP from Rajya Sabha, sir. Over to you.
Thank you. Hello. Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Hello?
You're audible, sir. You're audible, sir.
Yeah, thanks. I think there are network issues because of jammer used in the parliament, and I'll be very, very brief because I have to go to the house. But thanks for organizing this global development dialogue on a very, very critical and pertinent topic, water scarcity. As we all know, water is the most essential component for human, for all living beings. And the world is increasingly staring at a water crisis. Climate change is not helping the matter, and today we have a large section of population, particularly in the developing world and underdeveloped world, which is deprived of benefit and access to clean drinking water. South Asia, I think over half the population in South Asia do not have access to clean drinking water. I do not know the exact numbers worldwide, but it would be definitely a very large section of population in Africa, Asia, Latin America, Southeast Asia, where clean drinking water has become a luxury. It's ironical because 70% of the globe is water, and only 1% is good enough for drinking. Only 1% is potable. So we have to really create awareness as to how we can protect this valuable resource, how we should not let water go to waste, how we can conserve water through traditional means and through the leveraging of modern technology. I think civil society has a massive role to play here. Government can only do so much. So civil society, government, academia, industry, all the stakeholders have to work in conserving water, because it's the future. Because we can survive, as they say, without food for few days, but we can really not survive without water for more than a few hours or for more than a day. And water also, clean drinking water or lack of clean drinking water also leads to other issues such as health issues, economic and social deprivation. So we have to really take this up as a challenge, and the Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, audible.
Yeah, so the dialogue series that's being organized today will probably incite some thinking, some discussions on this important topic in Odisha and across the globe. Thank you again, Kalinga Kusum team and all the participants today, all the panelists for coming on board to discuss this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that brief message. We would like to also know your longer version of your presentation sometime later. And as the Kalinga Kusum team is working on some discussion briefs and policy papers as well, we'd also have your insights there. May I invite Dr. Suttapa Patti, who is a sustainability academic.
Kamala,
Yeah. Yes, Sujit sir.
I to go,
yeah.
so I beg your leave.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, all the best for the discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Dr. Patti is a sustainability practitioner and brings in years of experience to her practice and teaching, and perhaps one of the few schools in the world which is dedicated to sustainability, specifically training people in sustainability management. And we are very happy that she is here contributing and also partnering with this initiative of Global Development Dialogue, who was the founding member of this Global Development Dialogue when MP Sujit Kumar wanted to create such a platform of academics and practitioners so who can discuss this. Over to Dr. Patti for the message and your insights and if any recommendations as well. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Professor Das, and welcome everyone. I'll quickly start with a small presentation that I have prepared on 4 contexts that I'm want to discuss and take it up in the forum. My personal journey as far as Water Connect is concerned, just after my engineering from Burla, I was posted in Rajasthan, and my first project was with the Mayo community and their ancestral, practices of water conservation through check dams, which were called as PAL there. And where Rajasthan is one of the, all of us know, most resilient as far as water conservation, ancestral techniques, and some of the concepts which are practiced in the community as social norms also. Coming back now, I am a teacher of sustainability management in School of Sustainability. Once when we every year we conduct a sustainability summit, international sustainability summit, and one of our partners, Wipro, Mr. PS Narayan, we were discussing about the topic of that year. It was, I think, in the year 2015, 16, and I remember him telling that, Sutapa, for corporates, one thing which is coming up big is the concern for water. So today, coming from sustainability management, I would want to present on valuing water from the business perspective. And what 4 topics which I wanted to mention. One are the concept of materiality. Next is Odisha's context as far as being the water hotspot is concerned. Number 3 is what is WRI talking as far as aqueduct, their atlas, water atlas. And 4th is the context of water audit and metering. First, taking up the concept of materiality and what we call as impacts and issues. Most companies of the world now publish, along with their annual reports, their sustainability report. And in a sustainability report, there is a concept called as materiality map. Now, what is this word materiality? This word materiality means that being able to measure and disclose all the impacts that this do on social and environment. And therefore, with materiality comes the 2 words, that is issues. Should know materiality maps that I have brought in. All of us know that a lot of water-based industry, how water stewardship is something that they are putting very high as far as importance and impact are concerned. This is materiality map number 1. Again, materiality second context which I have taken is cement industry. Very critical from water point of view. There, even with a dry process per metric ton, I mean, more than 200 liters of water is a requirement, and more than 7 lakhs meter cube as far as water consumption is concerned. So these are processes which are heavily dependent on water. And another materiality map, if we see, is Tata Chemicals. Again, they have rated water as something very critical for their businesses. So on one side, I come from, I grew up in a city called Rourkela, and we have seen the Rourkela steel plant. And recently, in few years, we saw the severe crisis that the city faced because many of the businesses, their core processes is dependent on water and lots of it. With that as introduction, if I look at Odisha's, hotspot, we all know that whether it's oil and chemical sector or the steel plants and its allied industry, then thermal power plants, cement industry, all of them in their processes, either through their boilers or for their core reactions or for washing away their effluents, these are water guzzling hotspots. And Odisha is, Nanda sir mentioned about mining, being another hotspot as far as water is concerned. So, something that we need to very seriously think as far as from business perspective is concerned. How does business handle its water risk and what it is doing to the social and environmental indicators, apart from putting its own processes into risk and a serious question worldwide. Then, would like to present this concept of World Resource Institute and how they have mapped their, whole world and including Odisha, all its blocks and India. There are three terms here which I am presenting. One is all of us know. One is called as water scarcity. Another is called as water stress. And then we say water risk. So scarcity would be the supply and demand, which is like suitable water for human consumption. Stress is a little larger where you are talking of the human consumption and the ecological demand. And risk is all water related, harm that either could be caused or is caused on the entity. It could be even the water related disaster, water surplus related disaster that, our state faces. So when we understand these three terms, scarcity, stress, and risk, and we try to map, this is a screenshot of Aqueduct WRI. We can see that, and similar data is our state has it. I mean, ORSAC is measuring its water, mapping, water body mapping of Odisha. We have Government of India and a lot of our water resource, central and state government, most agencies and state departments are measuring the groundwater. And so this is a global aqueduct, map which is there. And we see most of India is under serious, the extremely high category of risk as far as water is concerned. This is specifically of Orissa. Nanda sir mentioned about the different river basins, two of them very popular, obviously the Mahanadi River Basin and the Brahmani River Basin. If we can see, even, we see that that also is in the extremely high, which is the 4 to 5 category. So when we connect this water duct and water stress and water scarcity concept with the geographical efficiency of cement industry, when we say, for example, if we want a Coca-Cola bottling plant, for geographical efficiency reasons, we'll spread it out across India. And similarly, cement, it is spread out. If you look at steel, so there are different vendors, also, so many of the industries, whether we want or not, are requirement of lots of water for their processes, and in turn are positioned in extremely high risk blocks or geographical region of India and Odisha. So as sir said, it is a local, water is a local, context. While emissions, we do it universally. So if a forest fire is happening in Amazon, it is bothering us also, because a lot of emission issues are global and universal. While water is also needs, it is a global, issue. The whole world is at risk. However, locally the context become more critical, with different, and especially when businesses are unable to manage the water risks of that, area. So this is one context that I was looking at. Next, fourth point, which I want to quickly mention, is the audit and the metering. Lot of industries are trying to measure. So there are some reports where Coca-Cola did a complete third-party audit of all its 6 bottling plants and making their water strategy, because you cease to exist if you do not handle the water risks. We can see some of the good examples, like Jan Irrigation has given the Indian industry a lot of ways in which they can measure their footprints related to waters. And here I am also mentioning Ambuja Cements measuring the value of water, where very interestingly they have used the true costs, which is called as the social cost of water. Social cost of water, basically, initial findings said it could from 0.10 dollars to $15, per meter cube is what the social cost of water could be. That means if your plant is placed in Rabriabas, water scarce area of Rajasthan, and it is there in a water positive area plant, the social cost of water would be different, and we need most plants need to be water positive. So with this small, four contexts, I would want to end that indeed it's a very serious concern, and most industry leaders have, especially whose processes are tremendously a big hotspot for water, are concerned. And Odisha needs to have a state level policy. I would urge, and today we have, some of us who are there in the platform and many more can join, both the hotspots of agriculture and industry, how we can, make this state water positive and work towards minimizing the risk is something that my recommendation and request would be to the panelists. And thank you, Professor Das, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pati. That was technical, but you made it very simple for us, and so that others can understand what it is. And in a very few slides, you took us through the possibilities that what others are doing, and what are the social costs, what are the ecological costs, and what are the perhaps the real cost that is actually we're doing, but we're not counting. Right, auditing of water is not happening in the context of society and environment. So there are certain companies which are accused of not doing really well, but they are creating certain strategies which can be useful, because people who, when we look at Coca-Cola, we perhaps think that they're not perhaps using water efficiently. So slowly you can see companies are becoming very, very sensitive to water use, and they are minimizing their water footprint in comparison to their past years. So which is a very increasing sign of positivity. And also, madam, and also the team, what can we do for ground recharge? What can we do for water conservation? What can we do for wastewater treatment? So, but there are three major areas where Odisha, India, and perhaps we are all suffering from. And how can government, business, and communities together work in a way that businesses take lead and governments provide facilitating mechanisms and communities participate? So we are perhaps very highly unaware. But anyway, this is, as a moderator, I just want to highlight that these are some of the important things that Dr. Pati has highlighted. So we will definitely get back to you as we draft the discussion brief on a water policy for government of Odisha. In this context, may I invite, thank you, Dr. Pati, for that brief but succinct but thought-provoking presentation. May I invite Jyotiraj Patra for his intervention, sharing of his experience and insight and recommendation, if any. He comes from the KVK area. He is an environmental scientist, also a water expert who works globally at the level of international and regional water bodies, and also works at transboundary rivers, how to manage transboundary rivers and people who are in that river basin, how women especially play an important role in transboundary river water management issues. So he's someone who has worked for more than 10 years in these specific areas, and as a scientist, as a social scientist, as a management consultant, as someone who looks at international development projects. How do you see these issues, and how valuing water needs to be embedded into our education and practice at the individual level and at the social and social and the government level? So over to you, Jyotiraj sir.
Thank you.
Jyotiraj Patra is from Oxfam, Cambodia. I just wanted to add that point. So over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Das. Thank you for this brilliant introduction. And at the very outset, I'd like to again thank the Honorable MP's Office, Kalinga Kusum Foundation, for organizing this global development dialogue, and particularly using this opportunity of the World Water Day to highlight the critical issue of valuing water. And if you would allow me to share my screen, I have 4 slides to share.
Yeah, you are the co-host now. Please share.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so in terms of my intervention, I will try and build on what my previous speakers already alluded to, and also they provided a lot of great examples from Orissa and also from the global context, and very specifically the corporate leadership, the corporate initiatives on water. So I will just start by highlighting the reason that we should be valuing water. So why is it that we are talking about valuing water at this point in time? So as previous speakers already highlighted, water is one of the most vital natural resources, but unfortunately it is the most threatened due to human interventions and climate change. Just to highlight the recent global risk report, which I'm sure many of you have seen from the World Economic Forum, globally water risks are part of the top 3 risks by livelihood. And these top 3 risks are extreme weather, climate action, and human environmental damage. And one of the things I would like to highlight more from the human rights perspective is water is a human right. And the UN has already acknowledged this. Member states have already included access to clean drinking water as a basic human right in many of their policies. And a very recent report from the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment, which was released on 7th of March, early this month at the Human Rights Council, it clearly highlighted the impending human rights and global water crisis. Particularly, it highlighted how, as the Honorable Member of Parliament was referring to, South Asia as a region is more vulnerable to not only the global water crisis, but it has a lot of human rights implication, particularly violation of rights to clean water, environment, right to participation in decision making, and most importantly, many of the rights of indigenous communities who are going to be affected because of some of the challenging context which declining water resources will pose. The important thing in the context of the World Water Day theme, which is on valuing water, the report has already been launched. It was launched yesterday, and I would encourage members in the discussion to also look at it. So it clearly outlines the need for an initiative or a shift towards multiple values. As we were discussing earlier, water has multiple values associated with it, be it ecological, more from the ecological and environmental perspective, socio-cultural aspects and values associated with water and rivers. There was a great example which one of the speakers was highlighting from Koraput and from the Indravati project, and water services, particularly related to water and sanitation. Water infrastructure is one of the important area where we see a lot of discussions going on, particularly related to water storage, infrastructure in many parts to combat some of the water risks during drought and dry seasons. And the other important thing is the socioeconomic value. And the good example I saw was from Professor Pati's presentation, like how there is often disconnect between what industries values and what the local communities in and around an industrial complex they value. So how do we align all these different and multiple values which are related to water and water resources? And the need for such a valuing water approach is very critical in the current context. A, because there is increasing competition over the water resources. We know the water resources are limited. Industrialization and urbanization put additional pressure on our existing water resources, and most importantly, climate change impacts. Water as one of the natural resources, most of the climate change impacts, whether droughts, floods, intense rainfall, and all these things are kind of are kind of expressed through water and water resources. For example, last year's flooding in Orissa is one example where we had large parts of Orissa affected due to due to heavy rainfall. And I think this is one area where we see the need to bring in different values related to water. And such multi-value approaches is very important because it further strengthens cross-sectoral collaboration and convergence. And I think that is very important. Why a lot of the government initiatives at this point, and also in Odisha, are gradually moving towards that approach. Although it doesn't say multi-value approach or valuing water approach at the moment, but if you look at some of the context in the state and also in India, there is a lot of efforts going on in terms of how do you bring in different sectors, different departments, different stakeholders groups, come together and talk about common issues which are around water, which are around wise use of water resources and its allocation to different sectors like energy, agriculture, industry, drinking water, and sanitation. So I think this is important for all of us to understand why we need to have this valuing water approach. And that gives a lot of scope and opportunity for us to become more efficient and effective with our water resources planning and its use in current context. Very briefly on the context in Odisha, and I think many of you are already aware of Niti Aayog's Composite Water Management Index, CWMI in short, which was released, the second version was released in August 2019. And Odisha as a state was kind of identified as one of the low-performing states among the non-Himalayan states. And Odisha reported the largest decline of 7.27 points when it was ranked among all the states in India. So that's a bit of a challenge, but that also gives an opportunity for us to work collaboratively and identify different avenues where civil society, academia, industry, and the government can work together to improve the condition with regard to water resources management, access to water, and efficient use in the state of Odisha. Odisha is one of the most climate sensitive regions, and I think I don't need to emphasize on it more. And the recent report from the Center for Energy, Environment and Water, a New Delhi-based think tank, they've identified large parts of Odisha, particularly the coastal blocks and districts, and those from the western Odisha, the KPK region, as some of the more geographic regions which are at greater risk of water-induced climatic impacts. It includes drought and flood. And because most of these blocks and districts are also inhabited by large rural population, these populations are at great risk of water-induced climatic impacts and disasters. So I think this gives the overall context in Odisha. But having said that, Odisha as a state has also undertaken a lot of initiatives in terms of improving the access, the availability of access to clean drinking water. One example which I think many of you are aware is the recent launching of the Sujal scheme by the Honorable Chief Minister of the state as part of the 5T initiative. And Bhubaneswar has become the first Millennium Plus city in India to achieve 100% household water supply connections. So in terms of the way forward, and I think this is where I would like to dwell a little bit, what can be done in terms of ensuring that at the state level, Odisha could initiate some of these valuing water approach in its current development practices, policies. And this is something which, as Dr. Kamala Das was highlighting, this is something which the Office of the Member of Parliament is keen to take forward in terms of collecting all these insights and information, coming up with a draft position paper, and then taking it forward in terms of more conversation, multi-stakeholder dialogue with different groups in the state, and then also taking it forward at the national level. So in terms of the first opportunity, I'd like to emphasize that we need to build on the existing momentum in the state. There is a lot going on at this point in time with regard to water resources, climate change impact assessment, and all these things in the state. So we need to sort of bring those insights and stakeholders together into one sort of a forum And I would emphasize like the Kalinga Kusum Foundation as a leading think tank in the state could take a lead role in that in collaboration with academic institutes like the Xavier Institute of Sustainable Studies. The second one I would like to highlight is support more people-centric approach. And I think this is something I would like to emphasize a bit, because water is always seen as kind of a hydro-engineering kind of subject, which Mr. Ranjan Panda was also referring to in his initial remarks. And it is good that we get the benefits from all those engineering structures like dam, water diversion projects, embankments, and other kind of grey infrastructure. But it is also important to understand the role communities and people play in those kind of initiatives. So rather than being purely engineering approach, it is more critical to understand the aspirations, the values of communities and people who are going to be impacted directly or indirectly because of those infrastructure developments, and particularly linked to their water access. So I think this people-centric approach is very critical, and some of these initiatives, particularly the policy frameworks of 5T of the government of Orissa, provides a lot of scope in terms of not only supporting such bottom-up and more participatory practices, but also ensuring that there is adequate and efficient representation of communities, including those whose rights are going to be affected directly because of any kind of infrastructure development projects. The third is create and sustain more political will on water conservation, wise use, and water stewardship. And I think this is very critical. And as the Honorable MP already highlighted, through this Global Development Dialogue series, thing that he has initiated as part of his new role as the Member of Parliament. But I was also informed that there is a group of legislatures in Orissa, which the Kalinga Kusum Foundation is closely working on in terms of making the legislatures, the MLAs, more aware of the critical importance of water and how does that impact all the development interventions in their respective constituencies. So I think this is this step by the Kalinga Kusum Foundation and the MP's office in collaboration with other stakeholders will be a very impactful initiative in this regard. The fourth point is the importance to shift from the current water alone siloed approach and to shift towards more integrated nexus approach, they call it in technical jargons. So water, energy, and food, WEF nexus approach, which takes into account the multiple values and use of water resources for energy and food. And that is something that many stakeholders, particularly UN agencies like FAO, IFAD, and others are working at the national level in India, also at the global level. But I think this kind of approach has proved to be more efficient in terms of not only improving the efficiency in terms of water use and reuse, but also ensuring the in terms of managing the trade-offs and conflicts between different sectors. So this is something which the state planning board and other policy bodies which are in the state could work on in collaboration with other stakeholders like civil society and UN agencies and academia. The fifth important point I would like to highlight is the opportunity at this point in time to review and update the Odisha state water policy, which was in 2007. And I think this policy needs to be reviewed in terms of the new national water policy, which the draft has been put for consultation last year. So this is an opportunity for the state and particularly the Water Resources Ministry to lead on the review of the policy and through a lot of consultations and dialogues with different stakeholders. And valuing water approach could be one of the pillars or elements through which we can bring different stakeholders together. The other important point which I would like to emphasize, and my previous speaker already gave brilliant examples from their work at Xavier Institute for Sustainability Studies, is to mobilize private sector participation. And this is an area which, in my opinion, is very critical, because private sector, industry, and businesses, they play a very important role in not only in terms of using water, but also bringing in water efficiency, water stewardship. For example, there is a global coalition called CEO Water Mandate, where a lot of the CEOs from different companies and business, including financial institutions, are part of this coalition. So some of the initiatives of that sort can be also established and also could be strengthened at the state level in Odisha, particularly looking at the industry associations in Odisha, the CIA, the Confederation of Indian Industry, Eastern Regional Chapter, and also there are various platforms in Odisha. They could particularly take the water stewardship as one of the key focus, not only to improve their own water efficiency, but also to actively engage with the government and civil society on developing Odisha's water efficiency in that sense. The last point, which I felt is very important, and I would like to put that for your consideration, is promotion of more women and youth leadership in water issues in the state. Water always remains a male-dominated kind of area. So we often don't find a lot of women engineers or women leaders or youth leaders talking about water efficiency, talking about all these things related to water. And one of the initiatives which we are doing through Oxfam and the Transboundary Rivers of South Asia, which I am part of, is as a regional water governance program working in the three large basins, the Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna, and also Salween Basin in Myanmar. We have initiated a Youth Basin Ambassadors Program called YPA, and it will be followed by regional youth dialogues on water, climate, and human rights. So that is something I think we would like to share with all the participants here, encourage those who are interested to consider applying for this Youth Basin Ambassadors and be part of the dialogue at the national, state, and also at the regional level. Professor Das, I will stop there and happy to take any questions or comments from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jyotiraj. That is brilliant. In 2-3 slides, you have brought the entire discussion and covered it so well. The approaches that how we can go from a siloed approach to Nexus One, and why we need to go in that direction, and why there is a possibility that the way Government of India has approached water resources issues, maybe a Jal Shakti Abhiyan, something like that, and Odisha can actually align its own policy in that direction. So all these are very thought-provoking ideas, and coming from you as a practitioner is a lot of value addition there. As you are saying, valuing water, I see a lot of value addition here to the discussion on water. Thank you so much for that. And we have time for maybe 10 minutes for Q&A. Anyone who has a brief questions, you can either chat, type in the chat box, or you can at least, or you can unmute and say something. So that would be brilliant. And Jyotiraj, I think in the chat box, the regional dialogue has been shared. Young Basin Ambassadors Program link for regional youth dialogue. I think thanks Sarita for that, for sharing that those links. So this is useful for our participants and our partners as well. We'll share that with our partners. So I work with Sri Sri University at the Climate and Sustainability Center, which is a partner organization, is a climate reality project established by Al Gore at the United States India office. We are a partner, and also with working with Odisha level JK paper. So that is one institution we have developed in last 1 year. COVID times, we have been kind of struggling to do one-to-one activity, but advocacy and individual intellectual exercise is ongoing. So we have another center at Sri Sri University, Sri Sri Center for Advanced Research in Water Resources and Environment Management. So a student from Jawaharlal University, a PhD, he is also looking at that center as well. So we have all those possibilities of collaborations and taking it forward. We'll be greatly privileged to take this forward, this discussion. So that is for some other time. We'll meet with our partners. And today for the participants, if you have any question to any of the panelists who are present here, Dr. Sutapa, Mr. Jyotiraj Patra, Nanda Mahapatra, and yes, you can, we have 3 experts here. Any questions?
I'm asking not a question. I think both Sutapa and yourself since both of you are working in sustainability management or whatever you call that. So my point is, Odisha is going for many such small projects. I was mentioning mega lift irrigation projects where the project size is between 500 hectare to 2000 hectare. It has got a lot of management issues of, I mean, it is a SCADA based program. But what I would like to know from both of you, that whether you can send interns to work with the people there in the command, with the O&M team and the water users, I mean, for better water management. So it will benefit you as an institute, benefit the students, and bring in technology to the field. So both Sri Sri University and Xavier, will you like to work for sustainability of water management in the field?
Definitely, sir. Thank you so much. And we have two undergraduate programs. One is called as BSc Sustainable Development, or BSc Honors, and then BSc Honors in Environment and Science. And one postgraduate program which is MBA in Sustainability Management, and then PhD. And happy to also inform that we have a working lab, which is obviously microbiology is a part of it, and air is also part of it. But the majority of the lab is been set up for water-related projects. So we are working on mapping of especially phytoplankton and health in CDA, with the CDA, the Chilka Basin, and also mapping the Mahanadi estuary for the industry affluence and water quality. And we have, because of the new education policy, we have changed our curriculum in such a way that students are learning by going to the field and collecting live samples and working with the community. So that is part of the curriculum. And I'll be delighted if any opportunity, our students can get to go live and work with the community and integrate technology and, learn from their experience.
I think since I'm out of government now, I think that's a very large field of, because a lot of controllers, water sensitivity, measurements. I think it is not only irrigation, water is one part, but there are not many other parts which come into play for productivity. So I think if any, I mean, government and educational institute interact, I think we have got large scope for sending, these interns, because as you said, with the latest education policy, I think they have to work for a semester there in the field.
Yes, yes.
So since both Sri Sri and Xavier is based in Odisha, and we have got large scope for, climate resilient crop productivity and all that. So that is one of my suggestion. You can take it forward if you discuss this with our Principal Secretary Water Resources, who is also in charge of this. So,
thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much for the suggestion. I think that works so very well for engineers, for practitioners, for some scientists who are looking at environmental science in general, water science in particular. So at Sri Sri University, I would like Dr. Parimon Maharana, who is here present, would you like to say in something in 2 or 3 minutes what you are doing at the center and how we can collaborate with the interns and take this forward? Are you there, Parimon?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you for providing me the opportunity. Actually, I've joined Sri Sri University 4 months back as a faculty of environmental science and faculty of science. And my research basically deals with the variability of monsoon and climate change, how extremes are changing, how the monsoon dynamics is changing. And basically, I'm working on the basically on the climate projection, basically. So how the future will be. So there are some information which we can get from this climate model analysis and all. And I work with few people from agriculture scientists, I would say. So I'll give you one finding which we get basically when we go ahead in the climate. Basically, when the temperature will rise in future, that is evident because of this emission of these greenhouse gases. So when temperature rises, but we found that early showing of the seeds will give us a better yield, because this is what we have found. And another interesting thing which I would like to share is, like, I was a part of a project of where we are doing some analysis of climate change on the water resource of this Leh Ladakh region, particularly Leh. And we found out that it was also, a team of natural scientists as well as social scientists. And I was a part of the team from natural scientists. And we found again we scientifically show that the climate of that region is changing. But what the social scientists found is very interesting to me as well, because I haven't thought about that. It is something very new to me. And that is, that climate change is basically affecting a particular gender. For example, we found that the water resources of Leh is basically it is now it has become very hard to get water. So what happens normally in our society, the women go out to fetch water. So what is happening right now, the women those who used to get water in maybe in 1 kilometer by going 1 kilometer, now they have to travel for around 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers to fetch the same amount of water. So this is also very interesting study. So this is something is related by climate change and gender. So scientists from the social science will interpret it in a much better way. So this is all what I want to say, and I'm here as a faculty. So I'll continue working on this with your collaboration, with the other teams as well, and I look forward.
The question was actually question was how to train young interns and bring their value and energy and understanding and the zeal to serve when they are young in undergrad and masters. They need the practical experience. So how our centers are gearing to hire them and utilize their services as well, and train them, handhold them, mentor them. All that is there. So but what you highlighted is one line that yes, it is not necessarily only the engineers who are getting the insights into climate change. It is actually, as Jyotiraj Patra said, it is the nexus approach, integrated approach, where we can get not necessarily siloed in the water, energy, food, where social scientists can bring that sync and complementarity to understand that. That's a very good point. So Parimohan, though he's a scientist, he is very well willing to listen to social scientists for a dialogue on climate change. So maybe a student from sociology, anthropology, and public policy can contribute as well as students of environmental science and water and engineering as well. And especially focus on disability, focus on women, focus on minority, focus on river basin community, all that. Right. Thank you. Thank you.
So that is what I want to just add one more point. I fully agree with Dr. Das. I think because of climate change, there will be more and more investment both in agriculture as well as water in future. And all our infrastructure is about more than 60 years old now, after the structures built after the independence. So there is a lot of scope if your students, not necessarily engineers, it can be, they may be sociologists or whatever you are saying, or the management specialists. If they go, they may create some startups in our state. They may create some startups in agriculture, because there are a chain of events starting from crop to the market. So that was my suggestion for creating many startups in the field of agriculture, irrigation, water resources, infrastructure, and all. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions in the questions have come in chat. I think Jyotiraj has already addressed to one question. I could provide potential pathways for future dialogue and actions, kind of narrowing down from the wide-ranging actions that were discussed today. Jyotiraj has already answered that, yes, we need to go ahead to the Nexus approach. Yes. Any other question anyone has asked in between? Yeah, Dipankar has asked, water is an elusive resource for sure. It would be great if the speakers can share the one key priority that they think is the most important action agenda for the next 5 years. Okay, for every one of us, for Jyotiraj, for Sutapa ma'am, for Jyotiraj sir, and for Nand sir, water is an elusive resource for sure. It would be great if the speakers can share one key priority that they think is the most important action agenda for next 5 years. Anything one? Okay. Over to Jyotiraj.
Thank you, Professor Das. So I have already tried to explain, and thanks, Dipankar Bhai, for the brilliant question. So for my perspective, I think looking at what's happening in the state of Orissa and elsewhere, one particular action agenda is to gradually move away from the siloed approach to water resources and towards more integrated nexus approach, where we bring in the water use and efficiency in food production, energy production, and then look at it more from a holistic perspective, and thereby further strengthening more multi-stakeholder approaches to water resources. So I think from my perspective, that would be one of the key agenda for the next 5 years. Thank you.
That's brilliantly put. And I can see the TROSA logo behind you, the transboundary, the rivers of South Asia. That
I think I'll add a point. Just look around you. I mean, whoever has asked Mr. Dipankar, water is flowing very fast now. So catch the water where it drops. So that is the slogan. That may be the slogan. Only thing is, all around us, we must try that the runoff, the water which flows to the rivers, and the runoffs must go now to the groundwater, to the recharge. We must start to realize that water has to be stored. If we can store it in stream, it's okay. If we cannot, then we have to see that water is stored for the next 5 years in our aquifers, in our rechargeable, the explorable water there. So I think Odisha will be sufficient if we keep water conserved. I mean, whatever use you want, ecological use, drinking water, and whatever we can go away from the what Madam Sutapa has shown. The color will change if we can start conserving, because Odisha has a low storage rate now as compared to, there are 3 states she showed. One is Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Andhra Pradesh. Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh. They are green because they have many number of check dams. They have many number of check dams. So they have stored, with all dams developed, with all check dams developed. I think she will agree, because she said initially Rajasthan has a number of check dams and where she has worked. And we have to, we have very good amount of rainfall. Only thing is we have to look for that conservation.
Okay. I would agree with 2 points. One is multi-stakeholder approach, what Mr. Patra said. The enabling of, traditional, and we have created some modern crisis, so there would be also need of some, new thoughts in technology to solve the problem that we have created, and bring back our traditional approach to preservation and conservation of water. But third point, which I would want to add is, sustainable consumption pattern shift. Lot of work needs to be done on this consumption pattern. And when we say shift, it is, through social norms, cultural context, national agenda coming forth in the consumption pattern shift, both in terms of food, nutrition, and water. So these are the 3 things. And multi-stakeholder, absolutely. I think Mr. Jyotiraj has been saying time and again, we need to engage with all stakeholders, and that is so critical. Many people ask me, why we have to engage with some of the business houses and all. And I keep telling my students and whoever I meet, if we don't engage with them, how do we work on the such, water guzzling processes? You have to work. We have to think of from the human and the ecological aspect. So we have to engage with stakeholders and bring everyone on board. Thank you.
Though I am a moderator, but I think my one suggestion is wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
That is my one priority area among all other areas that are there. Wastewater, the amount of water we waste is not diverted well, not conserved well. That is true. And also the amount of water we waste and put the chemical water we put into water bodies, what it does, it immense damage to the aqua animals, aqua life, and the water biodiversity. So life below water is threatened by mostly by what we actually put into the water. So if wastewater treatment becomes the #1 agenda, so that we do not enter into any chemical included water into the water bodies, then majority of the water bodies have the capacity to heal themselves unless we put in anything. So it is, as Jyotiraj sir was saying, others were saying, human intervention is actually creating a major cause. So my point is wastewater treatment and complete 100%, maybe in 5 years.
I will agree with Shutapa that we must keep pressure on the industries so that they reduce, recycle, and reuse. I mean, as you said, wastewater treatment, nothing, it has to be zero discharge to the drains. If it goes, then it has to be to some acceptable standards. So these regulators must be in place in the legal framework where the industries have to be pressurized to, you see, Rourkela steel plant was having a dam, Mandira dam. It was really, Rourkela steel plant was steel industry. At that point of time, it was a water guzzling industry. But now you see, same capacity plant has been put up by, or more than that, by Jindal and all. So the technology has changed. Or if you keep pressure on industries, they will come up with new technology for reducing their water. I mean, you can charge them more, you can, whatever regulation we can do, I think that has to be, it has to be in place.
Thank you so much for a brilliant discussion. And we had several questions on the chat, and we will get some more questions on the email, also on maybe on Facebook and comments. We'll share with our panelists. This was a brilliant discussion, and we have planned in next one week or so to create the discussion into one document and also send it to everyone and get a suggestion. And as Jyotiraj suggested, that to align how Odisha's water policy needs to align into national water policy and global water developments in there, and finding out what are the 5 things that government of Odisha needs to do in 5 years, as the question was asked. So maybe we can reach out to something and create a little bit of pressure point for our water bodies, for our water, and something that we can safely drink and survive. Thank you so much, Ananda sir. Thank you, Shutapa ma'am, for all your initiative and support. Thank you, Jyotiraj, joining from an international location. So he is our international expert. Thank you, Parimohan, joining at a very short notice. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sujit sir, who joined for briefly, but gave a brief short message. Thank you, Shovik Biswal, who is the MLA from Chaudhar Katak, who couldn't join, but has sent a message, saying that I would like to know what I can do in my constituency on the water. So he will be looking at our suggestions and recommendations as well. Thank you, Sri Sri University, for partnership. Thank you, the Javier University. Thank you, Kalinkushum. Thank you, Lex Mantra. And thank you for organizing this. And thank you, Sunil, for all that, for our team at the Member of Parliament's office. Thank you, everyone. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Grateful to you. Thank you.